this is Dr. Jones checking in. We're here with video lecture for A&P 2, lecture test 3, video number 10. And we are starting at the top of page 18. We are still in chapter 20, talking about the heart and cardiac physiology. Okay, so the last thing we said, cardiac cycle is one complete heartbeat. And the heartbeat starts with the atrial systole, which is when the atria squeeze. So from when the atria first start to squeeze back to the next time the atria start to squeeze is a cardiac cycle 1 heartbeat. Systole is squeeze, or when that chamber contracts. Diastole is don't squeeze, or relaxation. Fluids move from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure, just like gases. With the end of A&P 1, we spent like half a semester talking about ions and ion channels and which way do the ions move. And now that we're in 2402, where things are more complicated, if you squish stuff, it moves. That's your takeaway here. When you squeeze the blood, it will move. We'll do the same thing in respiratory. When you squeeze the air, it will move. So, fluids move from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure. If you squish it, it will move. In each chamber, the pressure rises during contraction, which is systole, and falls during diastole, which is relaxation. Systole is contraction, diastole is relaxation. The valves help make sure that the blood only flows in the correct direction, which is from the atria to the ventricles to the arteries. And blood only flows from one chamber to the next if the pressure in the first chamber is greater than the pressure in the second chamber. So you have to squish it hard enough, or it won't move. 4 phases of the cardiac cycle: atrial systole, atrial diastole, ventricular systole, and ventricular diastole. We need a different pen color. What pen color do we want? Kind of feeling cyan. Okay. It's a little off though, isn't it? Still, yeah. Okay, you know what? I'm going back to gray. The gray matches. Atrial systole, atrial diastole, ventricular systole, ventricular diastole. So the atria squeeze, the atria don't squeeze. The ventricles squeeze, the ventricles don't squeeze. Okay, so when the cardiac cycle begins, and here's our picture of the cardiac cycle. I believe we'll be looking at these bit by bit, okay? To start, all 4 chambers are relaxed, which is diastole. So when we start right here, we're in atrial diastole and ventricular diastole. So this second half of the normal heartbeat is what they call passive filling, where because there's no valve here, there's always blood flowing into the atria. But the AV valves are also open. So in passive filling, you're not squeezing. The AV valves are open. You're just passively filling up the heart. Now here they show the heart empty, which is weird, but I don't want you to think that there's a blood-air level in here, because there's not. When the heart is empty, it's just closed. There's no air in the bloodstream. There are gases dissolved in the bloodstream, but not bubbles of air. Bubbles of air are deadly, and we don't want them in the bloodstream. Okay? The gases are dissolved into the blood. Okay, so as it fills, that pushes the walls further apart, and when it contracts, that squeezes the blood out into the next chamber. Okay, so not an air line, just solid blood, and as it fills, it expands the heart. Okay, basic concept. When the contraction cycle begins, all 4 chambers are relaxed, which is in diastole, and all the ventricles are partially filled, so they're partially full, not all the way, but partially. And during atrial systole, which will be this first part of the cardiac cycle, next slide, in atrial systole, the atria contract, so the walls squish, and they squish the blood into the ventricles. The 2 atria contract together, and then the 2 ventricles contract together. Next, atrial diastole begins. So atrial diastole begins, and ventricular systole begins at the same time. The atrial diastole, which is relaxation, will continue until the start of the next cardiac cycle, which was here with the beginning of atrial systole. Next. And during ventricular systole, you can sort of see, the ventricles push the blood into the arteries. Both the systemic and the pulmonary circuits, same amount of blood into both circuits at the same time. Next, the heart enters, sorry, I bumped my mouse thing. Okay, ventricular diastole. So now, for the last of a normally timed heart cycle at rest, the last half of the cardiac cycle, we have passive filling in both the atria and the ventricles. And what marks the beginning of the next cardiac cycle? Atrial systole. Okay. I think I already said all that. All right, so if an average heart rate of 75 BPM is beats per minute, a single cycle lasts 800 milliseconds-ish. We can consider the events of the cardiac cycle as if they are happening on an 8 count, with about, the little tilde thing means ish, about 100 milliseconds in each count. Please use the text and figure 2016 to fill in whether the atria and ventricles are in systole or diastole in each count. I believe I have that chart. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the first count, we have atrial systole and then diastole for the rest of the cycle. And ventricular systole lasts roughly 2, 3, and 4. Now, I have this arrow here because this is passive filling. The AV valves are open, so the blood that enters the atria is just falling straight into the ventricles because the AV valves are open. So let's fill in the arrows. Give you a second. Okay, well, you have to pause and then you have a second. So we know that during this one count, we're squeezing the blood through. So clearly the AV valve is open there. And then I'm going to draw a line across here because during beats 2, 3, and 4, for this roughly 230, or 200, I think this one's 270 milliseconds, but roughly a 3 count. The AV valves are closed while the ventricles eject blood into the arteries. Oh, I had that in red. Okay. And then at 5 6, 7, and 8. The blood is pouring from the veins into the atria, into the ventricles for 5 of the 8 counts. Okay, while we're here, right here the AV valves are open, and then beat 2 the AV valves are closed. So I'm going to draw a line here. Well, actually not that far. Draw a line. Oh, poop. Now I gotta fix it. Such a pain when you do it wrong. Still going with gray though. Okay, right here, between beats 1 and 2 is where the AV valves close. Both of them at the same time. And this is your first heart sound, which is S subscript 1, and it's called lub. Lub is the technical term. Now, normally when I tell you something is the technical term, I'm teasing, but here I mean it. Lub really is the technical term for the first heart sound. Lub dub, lub dub. Okay. And then here is S2, which is dub, although they have changed it to dup. And you can take dub and my Oxford comma out of my cold dead hands. But there you go. Oh, and this is when the semilunar valves close. So the heart sounds, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, are the sounds of the valves snapping shut. Lub for AV valves, dub, dub for semilunar valves. What are the 2 AV valves? Just so we're clear. The bicuspid valve and the tricuspid valve. What are the 2 semilunar valves? The aortic valve and the pulmonary valve. We'll come back to that. And that's why that your pattern, lub up, lub up, lub up, that's why there's a break here for the second half of that, because passive filling. I just wrote that was entirely unnecessary. I forgot to do that. Okay, can you compress a liquid? Yes, like at industrial levels of pressure, yes. Can you compress a liquid? Yeah, no. Like if you, okay, imagine a waterbed. Y'all remember waterbeds? Okay, well imagine like a plastic water bubble in a frame. And you've got a toddler on one side of the waterbed, and you jump on the other side of the waterbed. Is the water going to compress? No, you're going to launch the small child. Don't. It sounds more fun than it probably is for the small child, but you can never tell. The children tend to be intrepid explorers. Quick story. For years, my son, who has always been an intrepid explorer, intrepid means fearless, has wanted to jump off the roof. When he was young, little like 2 to 6, he begged me routinely to let him jump off of the roof because he could fly. So I did make him a cape once, but I got that jersey fabric with the holes in it, and I made it like ankle length, and like on me, it's like, I found it the other day, it's like waist length on me now. And but like a whole circle one, and with like Velcro on the thing, so if he got it caught on something, it would just snap off of him. And I told him that because it was jersey fabric and it had the holes in it, like a football jersey, that the like the ventilation holes, that it wouldn't hold the air, and it wasn't the kind of cape that you could fly with. And then once he understood that I was not going to let him jump off the roof, he spent the next few years begging me to build a slide off the roof. So there you go. Can you compress a liquid? No. You will launch the toddler. Okay, how are we on time? I did actually make a timer, and we have 15 seconds left. So, oh yeah, and there's a big old concept thing. So, this next picture is on the test and on the final. So, this has been A&P 2 lecture timer. Stop. Lecture test 3 video. What was this video? Was this 10? 10. And we covered pages... No, we covered page 18. Yeah, we covered page 18 in 20 minutes. 15 minutes. That counts. Yeah, this next thing we want to do is 1 bit. Okay, so thank you, as always, for tuning in. The education must go on. Dr. J out. Command, Control, Escape.